I won't say it can't calm down.
The schedule's starting to leak a little bit, and naturally, with the Kansas City Chiefs being the world champions and all, they're gonna get some notification pretty quick, and that's kind of what we have. We have the Chiefs' first opponents as they drop another banner. We're gonna talk about that and more.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
It's a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC. I'm here with Craig Stout, Maddie Lane. Maddie, hello.
Oh, buddy, hello. I'm glad that you didn't ask me how I was doing. I'm really glad because it's schedule release week, and this is by far the worst week of the entire football. Give me the middle of June attempting to come up with a random trivia game for us to play on this very podcast instead of us having to talk about the schedule release, and it's just the order of which I digress. Craig, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderfully. I love schedule release week. It's my favorite week of the season. All of the things that Maddie hates, like free agency rumors and schedule release week, these are my favorites, my absolute favorites. So I'm so happy to be here with you, buddy. I hope you are well. Kent, my friend, how are you doing on this fine evening?
I find this to be the pinnacle of weeks, specifically because Maddie hates it. So I am enjoying every single. Maddie, it is mid-May and you've already gone to the Italian food scale. So like
we made it like a month and a half later than last year.
I feel like this is what I'm kind of terrified at what June's gonna look like, if I'm being honest with you, because we're just gonna. I don't know what's gonna happen. What kind of shenanigans are gonna unfold that we went to the Italian food scale literally the week after.
It's gonna top the schedule release.
Well, with that being said, let's talk about the schedule release. The Kansas City Chiefs' first opponent has been announced. They will be playing the Baltimore Ravens at home in Arrowhead as they celebrate and drop yet another banner on the NFL's forehead. So are you... I mean, I don't know if I really anticipated that it was going to be the Ravens for some reason, but here we are. Did you I don't know. I didn't think it was going to be the Ravens personally, Maddie.
No, I think the Texans were building up a lot of momentum for everyone's kind of guess, and that would have made a lot of sense. It's a team on the rise. It's not a rivalry, but it should be a good game. The Texans are on the rise during the AFC. These are two teams that you can easily envision both making the playoffs and playing each other. So it seemed like the Texans had picked up a lot of steam. And if we've learned anything from the Chiefs' schedules over the past few years, I definitely don't want to say it's the NFL trying to make things difficult, but they seem to backload a lot of the Chiefs' rivalry type games, a lot of their AFC playoff rematches with the Fraud Goals and the Bills seem to happen in late November and December, year after year. So I think everybody in the back of their mind just kind of anticipated the Ravens kind of run back happening later in the year again, because that's just the way things have gone for the Chiefs to open up the season with. It's pretty great. Like I make fun of the schedule release a lot because I think it's silly. Like the overall concept of being a big deal and having like a 3-hour special on NFL Network. But like this is a good matchup. I like getting this out of the way early. I think from a Chiefs perspective, you're getting a Ravens team that probably has a lot of turnover. Good time to get them. You get them at the beginning of the year. That's another not hard game that should be down the stretch. So I like it overall. I just didn't think it would be the Ravens.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. Again, this felt like a November, December style game, big ratings at the end. The Chiefs at this point are enough of a draw to where I think you can dangle any team that maybe is on the rise or a team that looks like it might be a perennial playoff contender in the future. The Detroit Lions last year were a wonderful week 1 game. I hated the game, but it was a great opponent to trot out there. And so I kind of expected that it was going to be something similar, not a rematch of the AFC Championship game. Like that's just not at all what I expected to happen here. So I was a little bit curious why this is happening, but when you start looking into it, it makes a lot of sense. Chiefs added a ton of offense. They're going to be a lot more explosive going into week one. There's not going to be a ton of tape, of these guys playing together. It's basically going to be the training camp stuff that we get to see on the internet and very limited, sort of preseason stuff. But that was great, Kent.
I know. I just turned my camera off to cough.
10 out of 10. Yep. The buttons are right next
now
to me.
You don't know who did it. It's a mystery. No one knows who did it.
Anyway, Chiefs could potentially be a lot more explosive. The Ravens have a brand new defensive coordinator. We're going to see kind of what they're cooking up. We're going to see what the Chiefs are cooking up. In my personal experience, I think that this is kind of a game that favors the Chiefs. I think the Ravens are going to take a little while to get their footing. New coaching staff, on the defensive side of the ball, a lot of turnover. Just makes sense that there's going to be a little bit of extra time it's going to take them. I think when these teams eventually do see each other in January, February, because I think these are two of the best teams in the AFC. I think we're going to just throw out everything that happens week one anyway. So I get it from the NFL's perspective. You get the tantalizing, hey, we could be seeing this in January. You get it week one, and then you get to flip it around at the end of the season where they're two completely different teams.
Couple thoughts. We've seen the Ravens be the pre-Halloween Super Bowl champions so many times over the last few years, and we've seen this team earn 1 seeds. We've seen this team have some success and start hot. I want to read you the last 6 week 1 games for the Baltimore Ravens. They won 25-9, 24-9. They lost 27-33 in a really bad year where they took 4th in their own division, but then the 3 years prior, 38-6, 59-10, 47-3. An Andy Reid disciple with a team that starts fast. I am like, this is a staple of Andy Reid too, where I think Andy Reid has historically started fast, in his time in Kansas City and his time in the NFL, where he runs those really tough, training camps. So his teams are ready to get out there and play week one. Whereas a few teams here or there, might take a little bit more time to get their feet wet, get things underneath them and get going. Andy Reid's teams typically hit the ground running. That's what the Baltimore Ravens have done too. So I think this is a really tough matchup from that perspective, where stylistically how, John Harbaugh has run his program and how, how they've, had tough training camps and they've always started off strong. That's something of interest to me, especially considering the Chiefs aren't going to have Rashee Rice on the roster. I find that a little bit interesting, just because.
Are they not? Or boy, are you breaking news?
On the game day roster.
We sure about that? I know James Palmer is saying, and Adam Schefter is kind of alluding to the fact that he might not be on the week one roster, but we don't know anything yet. You just said that a lot more definitively than I think, people were maybe ready for.
Especially since Matt Dickerson's not going to be on the roster.
Oh,
is that better?
Thank you.
Boy, we did the food scale ranking of the defensive tackle room, and I don't think Matt Dickerson's name came up once.
I don't think he did either.
That was some foreshadowing.
I'm heartbroken.
Anyways, yeah, I think it's a tough matchup without Rashee Rice, potentially. Sorry, and a team that starts hot. Any other thoughts on Ravens Chiefs, Maddie?
It's a game that's going to be played, and we have known they were going to play this game in Kansas City for quite some time now.
Okay, that's perfect. That's what I thought. I don't even know why I asked.
Hey, Maddie, I want to spend the next 52 minutes exclusively talking about this game.
This is my payback. This is what happens coming out of draft season, where I have a lot of fun. It's just this is where it gets to come right back at me, and we just got to talk about the schedule release for the same opponents that we've known for like a year who the Chiefs were going to be playing this year. So yeah.
Speaking of things we've known for a while, give me one of your most anticipated matchups for 2024, Matthew.
Did you guys know the Chiefs have to play the AFC West this year? So like that's cool. No. I don't know, man. Whatever. Let's see if they go back. Let's see if they go international again. Are the Chiefs playing in Germany again this year? I think that was some scuttlebutt for a while. Whatever game that is, we don't know what that is yet. So
nope, that's not happening.
It's not happening. Well,
nope.
Then I'm out. they'll play their games that they play, man. I already mentioned the Texans. The Texans are a fun team. They're on the up and up. They're rising up. CJ Stroud looks really nice. That team looks good. So that'll be a nice, fun game. Yay.
Thanks, Maddie. I appreciate your enthusiasm, buddy. It really seems genuine and comes through. I'm very excited about the 49ers in San Francisco. That one's going to be fun. That team is still going to be very good next year. That one feels like maybe a mid-season or late-season game. Cut to, it'll be week 2. But it feels like maybe a mid-season or a late-season game that is kind of, again, one of those little teasers for what could be happening there. The NFL likes to put those bigger matchups that are AFC, NFC, a little bit towards the middle of the season, later season, just to kind of really bring the big, the big revenue in when there's not a whole lot competing with them on those Sundays. So I just think that is going to be so hyped. Kyle Shanahan is going to be asked 43,000 questions that week. Do you feel like the Chiefs are your boogeyman? Do you feel like you can't get over the hump? Like that is going to be a media circus that week. And I think that it will be late enough in the season that both teams will have gotten a feel of who they are by that point. And so we'll actually get to see two teams that are really good duking it out in about the middle of the season.
Speaking of circus, we're backtracking. I'm pretty sure the Chiefs do play in Germany. Thank you, Tucker, for chiming in. That made me go research here. The Panthers are hosting a Germany game this year, and it has been reported by Max Schrader of a German newspaper and confirmed by Joe Person of The Athletic that it will be hosting the Chiefs in Germany. So thank you, Kent. I was correct. You can come at me at a different time. That's my most exciting game of the year, is the Chiefs traveling to Germany again to play an international game. It appears to be all but confirmed that the Chiefs will be the team that is traveling to Germany to play as an away team versus the Panthers.
Chase Daniel. What's up, Chase? Kirk Cousins at Viking is going to be a fun. Yes, that one is going to be incredible. I don't know what, like, I don't know what the reaction is going to be for that one. Like, I'm kind of fascinated with that, what that's even going to look like for them.
Yeah, Kirk, he's gonna travel there too. That's going to be the most fun part, because I think the fans loved Kirk by the end of it, right? Like, he was
yes.
And I think he was clearly very open to coming back. So that's probably one of the most, maybe not anticipated on the field. Like, obviously some of their fans of each team will be invested there, but just the storylines leading up to it, that's got to be one of the most anticipated games for everything going on.
I would say some other fun comments here. It feels like we play the AFC West every year.
Yeah,
that's from Carender. Quick question. Philip Melcher does ask, who is the worst AFC West team right now?
The Raiders.
I think so too.
The Broncos.
Listen, I want to pick the Broncos. I really legitimately do want to pick the Broncos. The Raiders don't have a quarterback. They have Antonio Pierce, but
did the Broncos?
Well, they took a first-round guy, so
okay.
The Raiders didn't.
So
the Raiders played the Chiefs very well. So
they did. Antonio Pierce is a good football coach. I was a little
and
mad
that defensive line, not dirty, but they have a defensive line that plays perfectly up to the line of dirty. From hard to dirty with Wilkins and Max Crowd. It's a good thing. That's a D line that's kind of scary.
I'm excited to watch. I'm excited to have the Bengals come back, because I genuinely the Fraud Goals. My apologies. I am looking forward very much to having them come back here in Kansas City. I'll tell you what, the level of just tunnel vision, sticking your head in the stand that I've seen from Cincinnati fans, not even pretending Mahomes exists, is just so funny right now. So I would love for them to have one of their, the only thing that they really know is Super Bowls, and us continue to dominate those. Anyways, let's move on to the tight end position and the cornerback position, our positional breakdowns as done by the Italian Food Scale. We're going to do a break, though, and we'll be back right after this.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs, straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
All right, we are breaking down positions and we are evaluating, the health of the Kansas City Chiefs roster based on, what we think of the room as it currently sits. And Maddie Lane, in very Maddie Lane fashion, has built a scale comparing it to Italian food. Last year it was cheeseburgers. This year we have we've slowly regressed into Italian food.
Regressed. My God, I was just waiting for the thing that Kent was going to say in the intro.
Regressed.
That was going to make me. Last week it was an Italian accent. This year he's running down Italian food by saying we have regressed.
Well, you forgot the Parmesan cheese take.
Listen, I don't want to acknowledge that even exists.
All right,
like we did Dickerson in the defensive tackle segment. Okay. So the Italian food scale, the grading scale for the position, we're going through all the positions on the Chiefs, all the different positional rooms, and we are grading them. But instead of giving them like A's and B's and C's or 1, 2, 3s, that's boring. Nobody wants to do that, right? That's not fun. Instead, we are grading them by Italian food restaurants to the Kansas City area. If you don't live in Kansas City, well, next time you visit, or if you visit, we're going to give you some recommendations of places to go or maybe not go. So it works.
And hammer them into your head for the next 3 weeks.
Exactly. You will never forget this. So starting at the bottom of the scale, we have the lowest tier. This is like the position where it says, man, you need some help. Fazoli's. Okay. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Next up from there is, okay, this isn't great, but it works. It can get the job done. And that's Olive Garden. Nice chain. You can have Olive Gardens everywhere. So far, Fazoli's and Olive Garden, wherever you live, you can try those, by the way. And next up, this is a very good positional room. That's Casconi's. Can't get that everywhere, but it's worth your time to go because it is, in fact, hey, guys, very good. And finally, the elite tier, the best of the best, is Garozzo's. Get it the next time you're in Kansas City. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Any questions, Kit?
Yeah, I think my phone's been listening to us record this podcast because I've been getting fed Garozzo's Instagram posts lately.
I'm jealous.
Oh, dude, you have to go and find these. They are so good. It is like the OG founder of Garozzo's explaining how chicken spadini began.
Oh my God.
People know that very specific quote I just gave because you've been living in Kansas City.
If you go in there and that's not busy, like, it's like an early dinner, late lunch or something during the week, it's not busy, you can ask them and you will have a grand conversation about whatever you want because they are very nice. So, hey, check it out. Go there. Have fun. Or Kit can tell you.
I think so. So there's a restaurant in Kansas City called Salvatore's, and it's like it's literally
they're not on the scale.
I know,
Oh.
but let me finish my story. They're a cousin of Garozzo's, and some think Salvatore's is actually where the Spadini actually began. That's all.
People. Well, now people are probably confused.
Now they're confused.
Yeah, I think they're confused now.
All right,
you introduce something not on the scale or the graphic.
Let's evaluate the tight end position.
Okay.
Matthew Lane, what are you giving the Chiefs tight end room as it currently sits?
I get so torn with these kinds of position groups, and like we did it with quarterback, and I think we just default to, and we should probably no qualms with it, to a Garozzo's because there's the elite player at the top, the best to ever play at the top, and you can say the same thing for tight end. I think the difference is with tight end, you can and should play more than one guy, so the depth does come into a factor a little bit more. It's not entirely around potential injury that gets any of the backups on there. You're not grading a guy purely as a back. Noah Gray is going to play at some point. Jared Wiley, if you're lucky and he develops well, will play as a rookie. If not, Irv Smith is going to play. Maybe Blake Bell gets re-signed. I know a lot of fans won't love that, but if they want a bigger tight end to block, maybe Blake Bell gets re-signed and he's going to play. So the other tight ends do play in this room. So you can't just say, oh, Travis Kelce's elite. We're giving this a Garozzo's off the top and just fly through it. That said, I think I'm still going Garozzo's because Travis Kelce is still elite. We saw it in the playoffs. When it's time to turn it on, he can do it. It's still in there. Yeah. Through a 17-game regular season, maybe there's some ebbs and flows. Maybe it's not as consistent as you want. Maybe you're not going to the OG location, so you're not getting quite the same consistency of Garozzo's that you once had. But it still works because you know when it's crunch time, you know the right place to go, and that's to 87. That's the OG Garozzo's, and you get it going. And then you bring in Noah Gray. I think he's a very solid tight end too. It's not, I don't want to say niche, but he has a role. He has a specific role that he plays and he does well.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully Jared Wiley can provide the kind of the same thing this first year. I think the room as a whole wraps up together because you have a Travis Kelce at the top. It's a Garozos for me.
Yeah, it's a Garozos for me as well, and it's not just because of Kelce in this one. Like when you look around the league, I know that we do this kind of stuff with these elite players at these positions, and then we looked at the rest and we kind of average them all together. Yeah, it's a big step down from Travis Kelce to Noah Gray. It's a big step down from Travis Kelce to Mark Andrews. You know, it's still a big step down. And people hold up like that Baltimore Ravens room as like one of the best tight end rooms, that they have Isaiah Likely and they've got Mark Andrews and all. Travis Kelce being so far head and shoulders above the rest of the league as a tight end helps mitigate some of the rest of the room there, but it's not like this is a bad room. It's not like it just falls completely off. Noah Gray is more than a functional player at the NFL level. They utilize him so many different ways, especially in those split zone looks with, him kind of as an insert blocker. He can get, run up the seam. It seems like there's always one target that is just clutch every single game for Noah Gray. And now you've got a guy that's going to have some speed, length, ability to get vertical, has some route running chops, and Jared Wiley as well. This room looks a lot better than most of the other rooms around the NFL. Like, we're to the point that Irv Smith is tight end 4 in this room right now. That's a better tight end 4 than probably anybody else in the league. And I know that Irv Smith has not lived up to the billing, but every other tight end 4 in the league is nothing. Like, it's just a special teams guy. You're not expecting him to really contribute. I know that the Chiefs have gotten the most out of tight end 4 out of arguably any other team in the league under the Andy Reid, kind of tenure here. Irv Smith is a tight end 4 that is better than every other tight end 4 of the league. So now the argument becomes, how much further down the rung is your tight end 2 and 3 from the rest of the league? And when you look around, it's not. So it's not just Travis Kelce and a bunch of jabronis that are completing the rest of the room. It's a serious 4 tight ends that can all contribute, and very, very, very few other tight end rooms in the entire NFL can compete with that. That's why it's a Garozos for me.
I mean, we did breaking news team on Irv Smith, and Irv Smith.
Yeah, we did.
That should tell you everything.
I was a little bit jazzed for him as like a tight end 3 type player. I mean, yeah.
And there's some upside there too. This is a Garozos with some upside. And that's crazy to say, because I think this is the best, this is one of the best tight end groups in the entire National Football League. And it's already a very stable group with an elite player and also a really strong, solid tight end 2. But also some real nice upside. You mentioned Irv Smith and Jared Wiley too. These are 2 different players that you're seeing that have the ability to make some plays at this level. Irv Smith, obviously, the sample size has not been particularly kind to him, but there's been some issues with him there, and from a medical perspective and fit perspective. But he's tight end 4 for Kansas City. And Jared Wiley, there's a lot of optimism and excitement about him. You're already hearing a little bit of buzz about him and his performances in the very limited sample size that we've seen. He was at Camp Mahomes. So Mahomes has gotten a chance to kind of get a look at him up close and personal as well. There's reason to be excited about this group. I think Jared Wiley has the ability to be better than Noah Gray. And that's fascinating to me, because and it's not like it's going to be a year 1 thing necessarily for me, but I think Jared Wiley has the ability to be a better pass catcher in the NFL than what Noah Gray has presented. I think Noah Gray's been more than solid for this team over the course of his time in Kansas City. So I love this group. I think this is a great little group that they have here at the tight end spot. Probably one of their strongest positions in the entire team.
On that note, let's look at this here. Do you think that Irv Smith and Jared Wiley combine this season for this stat line, higher or lower? 15 targets, 10 receptions, 130 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Higher.
Yeah.
I don't think like significantly higher, but I do think it's higher. Yes.
Touchdowns piece of it's probably the one that's the most, I don't want to say problematic for me, but
I don't know. I see Jared Wiley getting used in the red zone a lot.
I do too, but 3 touchdowns is a high bar to clear.
It is. It is a high bar to.
Yeah, for tight ends 3-4.
Especially on 8 of your catches, if 3 of your 8 catches are touchdowns, like that's a number I struggle with. But I mean, honestly, outside, I feel good that pairing can get that number. Yes.
So I went with those numbers because that was Jody Fortson and Blake Bell's combined stats from 2022. That's what they had combined in 2022. I think Noah Gray still clearly your tight end 2. Travis Kelce's clearly still your tight end 1. Wiley and Irv Smith. And I wanted to combine them because I don't know if Wiley's going to hit the ground in year 1 as a rookie, ready to put up those Jody Fortson numbers, which it took him 6 years to get to that point. Not as a knock, but that was 6 years in this offense, perfecting what they wanted out of him in that role. Blake Bell comes in after Jody Fortson gets hurt, steals, a couple targets later on in the season, whatever. So I think that's a good benchmark for them. It seems a little lofty to me when you consider that team was also running with MVS and Juju Smith-Schuster and not
Pete
that those
Travis.
guys weren't good. And Pete Travis Kelce, but they were just running with a Juju Smith-Schuster and MVS. The offense was really kind of clicking in 2022. It was a new offense that the league hadn't seen. It seemed like the Chiefs were hitting all the right levers. This year is just going to be interesting because the Chiefs seem to have some dynamic weapons at wide receiver, especially if Rashee Rice does come back at some point in time this year and Xavier Worthy hits the ground running. And now you have a healthy Hollywood Brown. Hopefully, we didn't even talk about the revenge game for Hollywood Brown angle to start the show, by the way. But it's just, I don't know. I don't know where the targets are going to go out when this goes out. So I feel like that's probably a reasonable number or stat line to go for.
I think it is too. And maybe I'm a little bit higher on Jared Wiley. Just right now, I feel good about his ability to integrate himself into the offense pretty quickly there. I think that Noah Gray is going to be on the field a lot still. Irv is the one that I'm looking at that when you're presenting that stat line for tight end 3 and 4, realistically, all I'm looking at is Jared Wiley there. Irv Smith might contribute, and I hope he does, but I think that Jared Wiley has enough dynamic nature to him. The other guys that you listed, Jody Fortson, Blake Bell, aren't guys that are going to take, a seam route and go an extra 20 yards with it. They're going to get hawked. They're going to get brought down. That's not their forte. Jared Wiley might run away from a linebacker. He might run away from a slower safety. I could see him getting on his horse and moving a little bit on some of those, which could result in more yards, which could result in more targets in the offense. And especially if the receiving weapons are as dynamic as we hope they are, and a Rashee Rice maybe isn't playing early in the season, having another intermediate weapon that they can kind of play a little pitch and catch with in an open area of the field where teams are really terrified of Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy over the top, that just gives him a few more targets maybe early on or in the period if Rashee Rice isn't on the field. So I'm hedging my bets towards him being kind of a guy that steps into that role in the offense and can be a more dynamic receiving option in the intermediate areas.
Speed round. I'm following up to Maddie's game. Over under 7 catches for Jared Wiley this year. Maddie, go.
I'm gonna take the over, but it comes in the final week when starters are resting.
Wow.
Ooh, I'm gonna say over before the final week. I think he gets 10 in the first 16 weeks of the season.
So I know you said speed round, but we haven't talked about it. I wrote on the KCSN Substack last Friday about Jared Wiley, and I think we're getting too far away from it. So I just kind of share a little bit, and anybody need to go read that, please go read it. But if not, my concern about Wiley for year 1 is just the lack of play strength. And it shows up against college corners. College corners could bully him. And that's where I get a little nervous kind of saying hey, I think he's going to be able to hit the ground running, when the two things that I think he needs to work on, I think he can, because you saw flashes, but the physicality, you can't get beat up by college corners when you're 6'5", 6'6", 250 pounds. I think that might be an adjustment at the NFL level. And then zone coverage, some of his footwork on his routes, you could clearly see him thinking when teams played zone coverage where he needed to go sometimes, specifically from safeties running crosser routes over the middle of the field. And so I think you're looking here as the Chiefs, oh, I have a guy that can't play physical and needs some work reading zones. I could see it being a little bit more of a slow burn for him to catch up to the NFL level. So that's why I think it's that experience down the stretch, the final week of the season, where you might see some of those volume stats come. That's the reason I kind of would go that angle or be cautiously, pessimistic, I guess, but about his production in year 1.
I think he's me and Craig talked about during the draft. I think he's a high red zone type player. That's and is a package. He's just a package player type, I think, is what you get out of him in year 1. Anyways, Noah Gray, 7 catches, 36 yards, and a touchdown his first season. that was his stat line. That was Noah Gray's stat line his first year. He's been at 28 catches the last 2 seasons, near identical. 28 catches, 299 yards in 2022, 28 catches, 305 yards last season. So
And that's where it gets tricky because like they use Noah Gray in these like pseudo Kelsey like creation roles where they try to get him out in the flat and like give him some room to run. I don't think Noah Gray is necessarily a great yards after the catch player. Wiley's better. He's probably better in that position, but it works when the goal is to misdirect to have Noah Gray out there and not necessarily Jared Wiley. Like when Jared Wiley goes out there, you're probably like, okay, he's probably not out here for his blocking presence or his knowledge of the playbook at this point in time. There might be something coming. So it's just, I'm curious to see how they use him because I do think that they've used Noah Gray in a lot of ways that I think Jared Wiley would be very useful in. It's just a matter of, does he take that role year one, or is it maybe next year when Noah Gray's not here anymore, where you see that big spike in Jared Wiley's usage?
okay, let's move on to the cornerback position. Matthew
That's a
Lane.
Garozzo sweep at tight end, right? Garozzo sweep.
Yeah.
Garozzo sweep. Yep.
Woo.
Go figure. 2 first ballot Hall of Famers
Oh,
in
my.
Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are leading us to Garozzo sweeps.
What?
Shocker.
Oh.
I thought you were about to say there were 2 first-team Hall of Famers in the tight end room, and I was like, well, let's just pump the brakes a little bit on Jared Wiley.
On Garrett Prince.
Oh, I thought he was talking about.
I got
I thought
full
he was talking
faith
about
in
Irv
Garrett
Smith.
Prince, baby.
My king, Garrett Prince.
My
Yeah,
king.
listen,
Maybe he
Baylor
should move
Cup,
the forward.
former 5-star. Just saying.
What's the cornerback room, Maddie?
What's the, well,
I've been trying to
cornerback is a
transition for a
position-
minute and a half here.
It's on the defensive side of the ball, so I understand the confusion, and it's close to quarterback. It's actually the players the quarterbacks try not to throw the ball to. Okay. The cornerback.
Unless you're Nathan Peterman.
Well, true.
It's May.
The cornerback position. They lost L'Jarius Sneed last year. And I don't think one player maybe should have a big of a swing here, but I don't know. I feel like I have not been critical enough. This is maybe a little hot takey because I feel like I've been a little too positive about every position group. There's got to be a position group that's a little bit worse than what it looks like on paper. There's got to be a position group that maybe takes a backslide this year. I'm kind of going predictive here. I'm giving them an Olive Garden, and I don't feel great about it because I love Trent McDuffie. I think he right there like gives you a pretty safe floor just having one player like that. We've seen a Joshua Williams. We've seen a Jalen Watson be useful, be efficient in this team. But the problem right now is I think you just kind of probably got worse at cornerback 1 because it's not Sneed. You're now having to elevate Williams or Watson to cornerback 1. And you got worse at cornerback 3 because the other guy now isn't being protected as much because they don't have Sneed across from him. 2 cornerback positions got worse than they were last year. Now, maybe Najee Johnson comes back and steps up. Maybe, they have other guys in the roster they kind of like that. Maybe Kamal Hayden has a great rookie year, right? Maybe they have some guys. Kelvin Joseph is a sleeper of a guy that they signed apparently late last year that slipped under the radar on me. I don't think he's good, but he had a lot of talent coming out of Kentucky. He was an early round draft pick for a reason. Just they have guys, but I don't know if I think that I can bet right now that one of them for sure steps up. So I'm afraid they're going to take a little bit of a step back at 2 cornerback spots. That's going to lower them down to an Olive Garden for me, but a good, solid Olive Garden meal.
I am going a lower tier Cascones here. And
DoorDash Cascones? Is this a DoorDash Cascones?
I didn't. It's an Uber Eats Cascones.
Same thing.
Listen,
The
what
first
are my
5
sponsors? We're covering our bases here, Kent. What?
Okay, we're gonna diverse.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, see,
This
we're
is
diversifying
sponsored.
the portfolio.
This is
here.
what happens when you can mute yourself to cough.
So anyway, I'm going with a little lower tier Cascones, and I don't disagree with anything that Maddie just said right there. Completely agree with that. And schematically, I am a little bit terrified about what they're going to get to run, and I am putting way too much implicit faith into Dave Merritt at this point, but he hasn't proved me wrong. And that's what I keep coming back to. I want to give it an Olive Garden. I want to be a lot lower on a position group because, frankly, I haven't gotten below a Cascones so far since we've done this. So I know that I've got to pick one at one point. I've got to come up with something at one point. I can't, in good faith, do it because, yeah, Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson are kind of best when they're in a platoon a little bit, where you're finding the right matchups for those guys. It gives you the flexibility to play a Joshua Williams against maybe a bigger wide receiver that's got a little speed on him versus maybe a Jalen Watson's a more technical route runner where he can keep his eyes in the backfield and try and jump and be a little bit more of a ball hawk. I see the way that they've been able to utilize those guys, and that may be gone if a Najee Johnson, if a Kamal Hayden, if a Keith Taylor, my guy, Keith Taylor out of Washington, love those Washington corners. Eko Boydo had a great rookie season. There's all these guys. And Miles Battle, who went undrafted, but is a tier 1 C-back guy. Also, who knows? We'll see if it's in the mix here. Every single year now, we've gone into training camp and we've looked at this group and we've said, okay, if a L'Jarius Sneed stays healthy, if a Trent McDuffie can find the ball, if, there are still caveats to all of these players that we now kind of hold in this very, very high regard that have been all pro level players last year, especially both of those guys were. I keep coming into the season every single year thinking, they need to add more to the room. They need to add more, bites at the apple to this room with real talent here. And every single year they go to the well in day 3 or in UDFA and they find guys that not just contribute, but contribute on the active roster. That is Dave Merritt's influence there. That's his ability to do stuff. And we'll get to safeties in a future episode. But I think what they're going to be able to do with the safeties is going to vastly benefit the corners and what the amoebic nature of that secondary can actually look like. I can't bet against Dave Merritt at this point. So it's a Cascones.
Talk about safeties. By the way, if you're on the KCSN Substack, you got 2 posts on Friday and not one today because it's the off season for us and we were just a beat off. So Maddie and I both wrote articles for Friday. And so you can go back and read that today if you want for Tuesday, your typical Tuesday article. So just go check both those articles from Friday out. We'll be back on Friday on our regular schedule, probably. I'm a little torn. And I'm having a hard time kind of like last year's was such a clear-cut Garozzo's. It's not even funny. It's an elite cornerback group. I'm trying to figure out how many teams are really happy with their cornerback situation in the National Football League. Like if we're grading on a curve here and we're looking at this, how many teams are giving it a Garozzo's? How many teams are giving it a Cascones? And I just have a hard time believing there's very many teams in the National Football League that are able to give their cornerback groups a higher tier kind of grade and feel good about it. The Chiefs have a blue chip player at cornerback, and they have 2 players that have played quality reps over the first 2 years of their career. They can play larger. They've played, full games. Both of them have played full, kind of snap counts over the course of their, careers. They've had to play, higher snap counts in the past, and they've, performed capably. It's definitely not the same strength that it's been in the past. But if we're looking at the landscape of the NFL, there's probably not a high level of satisfaction at the cornerback position across the board. I'm torn between the two, but I just feel like because of the scarcity, I still think I feel pretty good about the cornerback position compared to, some of these other teams that are trying to, piecemeal and navigate the cornerback position themselves. Give me the Cascones kind of, I don't know if it's grading on a curve or what, but having a blue chip player, having some capable depth, having 3 cornerbacks that you can play on the field, and the potential for some decent depth there as well. I think you got to go with the Cascones here. But I'll hear the argument for Olive Garden kind of just in a vacuum, I guess, if that makes sense.
I don't think there's necessarily like an argument, like from your perspective, if you're going to grade it on a curve to what we kind of assume other teams are, then yeah, like I think that's completely kind of fair to say like, well, not that many teams are going to be 2-3 deep at cornerback to where they feel good about it necessarily. Everybody's kind of going to be in the same boat. I'm just still kind of basing it on when I look at the Chiefs cornerback room, I don't go, oh, that cornerback room is very good. I say, yeah, it can work. Like, that's my initial reaction. If I were just to look at it on paper, I'm saying like, yeah, that could work versus like, it's great. Last year, I think we entered the season. I don't remember last year if we all gave it the elite tier or the very good, but
Probably
we would have
very
been like,
I would say probably very good would be my guess is where we
yeah,
had it.
because you were waiting for Trent McDuffie to make that next step. You were trying to see what was going to happen with L'Jarius Sneed, right? Like, so there was reasons that it may or may not have been all the way to the top. And like, it clearly would have been with L'Jarius Sneed and easy Garozos right now. But I think now you look at it and it's just a clear cut, like, yeah, these guys are good enough to win. It can win, but there's also some potential cracks that are available out there. So like, that's why I think I have to go down there. But like, I'm fine calling it Cascones if you are going to buy into the development, if you're going to buy into the people out there, because this team has shown that they can routinely churn out these types of guys, turn these players into competent pieces. My concern or my counter is like, we've seen what the competent pieces are. You just have the stalwart. You have the central piece to build them around. Right now, your central piece is I love him. Trent McDuffie's great. A slot corner who doesn't particularly match up well with big wide receivers and has had times where he struggles to find the ball vertically downfield. So like, there's just maybe some extra work that Steve Spagnuolo has to do this year.
He didn't against Debo.
That's true. He didn't.
He doesn't run no routes, but that was great. That was great. That was great. Debo's just like, I wouldn't, yeah.
The counter argument to that, Maddie, again, totally agree with all that. The counter argument to that is we spent how many years talking about, is L'Jarius Sneed going to play a full season? Is he, he's just a great 2 years ago, we were talking about he might be the most impactful player, impactful cornerback in the NFL, or one of them. But we couldn't really say that because he couldn't cover. Like we were talking, this was 2 years ago that we were like, man, well, he's not very good in coverage, but what he does blitzing, the impact that he makes on the game, with PBUs and, coming up and run support and things like that, those matter to this team in a big, big way. Then last year, he took that next step. So maybe a Trent McDuffie takes that next step. Maybe a Joshua Williams takes that next step. I don't know which one of these players that I would bet on taking that next step, but every single year we see one guy come out of the woodwork and get significantly better under Dave Merritt's tutelage. So I'm just predicting that we're going to have a player not get to L'Jarius Sneed's level. By all means, I do not mean that at all. That man was an all-pro last year. But maybe a Joshua Williams gets to a good tier rather than just an average tier. Jalen Watson gets to a good tier rather than just an average tier. Najee Johnson comes out of nowhere and elevates himself into a good tier cornerback. And now we're talking about this room again and just going, how do they keep doing it? It's because they have a market inefficiency and having a coach that maximizes a whole bunch of day three guys. Every team in the NFL would kill for the day three corner success that the Chiefs have had. And just because it doesn't have like the top end talent, you don't have a whole bunch of first and second round picks that were absolutely in love with their college tape, doesn't really mean anything. I was not a fan of Shamari Connor's college tape last year. He was a damn good safety for the Chiefs last year. I was not a fan of L'Jarius Sneed's safety tape in college. Like I wasn't. It wasn't very good. Guess what? He turned out to be a damn good pro. Just happens every single year with Dave Merritt at the helm. So that's realistically what I'm betting on. I just can't see the floor falling out until it actually happens for me.
Well, they do a good job of, this is if you look at the secondary as a whole, they do I think a tremendous job, just, Andy talks about exploiting players' strengths. That's not just the offense. Like, I think we just tie that commentary so closely to the offense. Andy talked about exploiting the strengths of his players and getting guys in positions to have success, but it's not just the offensive side of the ball. And we don't spend enough time talking about how it works on the defensive side of the ball too. You think about Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams. Yeah.
People are sick of hearing me talk about Joe Cullen.
I'm not.
No, they're not.
I'm not, people. But I don't know. I think they do a good job of just, playing to these guys' strengths too, right? They're protecting them a lot with too high and letting them be physical and all that stuff at the line of scrimmage, and it works. And they've got a lot of really interesting swings, and you kind of just hope the depth in competition plays itself out where you've got capable depth, and maybe there's a player that could surprise too. And if a player, if Kamal Hayden turns out to be a dude, like, this is just, this thing is just ridiculous. What is happening in Kansas City?
I mean, even if Nazir Johnson returns from injury and he's the guy that proves to be really good, because like we haven't seen it right from him. Like he was used sparingly as a rookie, and then last year it seemed like he was maybe on the upward track, but then the injury derailed what the season could be. Or Nick Jones, or Craig's guy Keith Taylor, or if Kelvin Joseph shows up, or Echo Boyd, like if any one of these guys hit, to even just being, and I don't say this completely negatively, a Joshua Williams or Jalen Watson level player, which isn't a star, which probably, I mean, look at the Chiefs. They don't see either one of them as a starter, hence why they rotate them, right? Like they see them as rotational corners. But like even if any of these guys get to that level, they're just hitting rotational cornerback after rotational cornerback in UDFAs, day 3, free agent signings. That's ridiculous. Like they have the numbers that I think we should be hyped about. I've been a little bit just in a wait and see. I think we all agree and like we have the same takeaway. It's just a matter of where we stack the group. I am excited to see which one of these cornerbacks step up though. I think one of the non-Williams or Watson is going to come out of this season being the guy we talk the most about. And I don't know which younger other corner it's going to be, but I think the corner that we talk the most about is not going to be a Jalen Watson or a Josh Williams or a Trent McDuffie. It's going to be somebody else. It's just a matter of who kind of wins that job and takes that role.
I agree. It's a little tricky for us all to look on the outside looking in, and say, oh, like it's not going to be able to pinpoint it. But you look at the swings that this team has given themselves, you have to feel like some of these guys are going to get better. There's a player development arc happening that we don't always do a great job of acknowledging all the time. And that's to a good degree, like we can't because we're not in the building, getting to watch that development. But you've got a list of guys. You got a Nazir Johnson, Kamal Hayden, Nick Jones, Echo Boydo. Like this is a list of players. Miles Battle, a tier 1 cornerback athletic tester, as was Nazir Johnson. So good athletes, good swings. Curious to see who actually kind of comes out of this. Anything else before we get out of here, Matthew?
Schedule release coming at you Wednesday. Let's go. Woo!
There's
best show of the year.
There's literally no one I would rather do a schedule release show with than Matty Lane.
It is going to be our
set the alarms
show.
I'll take Matty's place.
Ooh. Tucker, we might just put you on the show this week. This on Wednesday, we might just put you on the schedule release show.
Good thing there's no real wrestling on Wednesdays.
Oh, that is a good thing. That's going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening, for eating Italian food. We love you. We'll catch you later.
Eat Parmesan cheese. It's great.